It's decision day for an LSU target. We'll tell you what's up with it next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So Friday is decision day for one LSU target, and Saturday is decision day for a second. And they both play the same position, and it could be massively impactful for the future of the LSU football program at that position. We'll talk about those two prospects here in just a second. Also, I was asked a question by one of you, which is a pretty simple one, but an obvious one. With the success that the LSU receivers have had early in camp, should we be excited about the receivers or worried about the secondary? Fair question. We'll get to that in a bit. And some interesting comments from Garrett Nussmeier and a national talking head about LSU's focus on Clemson in the opener. So we've got a ton to do, and we're glad that you're hanging out with us here. It is decision day here, however, on this Friday for an LSU target, and it is a familiar name. It is a defensive tackle by the name of McKinley, but not Dom McKinley. Of course, he's already playing at LSU, but Dominick McKinley's younger brother, Darryus McKinley, is set to make his announcement here on Friday, August the 1st. And for Darryus McKinley, he is down to 4 schools. It is LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Texas. So we will find out what Darryus McKinley's future will be here with him set to make his decision on Friday, being that he's down to these 4 schools. Excuse me, I misspoke. It's LSU, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. Forgive me. LSU, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee are his final 4. My apologies for that. For whatever it's worth, Darryus McKinley is thought to be an overwhelming favorite to land at LSU. The Rivals recruiting prediction machine has LSU with a 99.1% chance of landing Darryus McKinley. Now, let's go through the star rating, the ranking, all that sort of stuff, just to kind of fill you in on Darryus McKinley. He is a 3-star in the composite nationally. He is number 477 overall, and he's the 48th best defensive lineman in the country. Now, one of the things that often happens whenever an elite LSU prospect or player's brother is being recruited or commits, people always say in some version of, well, is he as good as his brother? We heard about this with Leonard Fournette. They signed Leonard Fournette. A few years later, Leonard Fournette was being recruited. Is he like his brother? No, he's not. Leonard Fournette was the number 1 player in the country. Leonard Fournette was not as good as his brother. Doesn't mean he wasn't a good player, but he wasn't Leonard. Similar just a year ago, Jacob Bradford committed and signed with LSU as a defensive back. His brother, his younger brother, Blaine Bradford, is the number 1 safety in America for the upcoming class of 2026. When Jacob Bradford was being recruited, people asked, is he as good as his brother? No, he's not. His brother is the number 1 safety in America. So he's not that guy. Doesn't mean he's not a good player. Doesn't mean he's not worthy of playing at LSU, but he's not his brother. So some people are asking the same question with Darryus. Is he as good as Dom? No. Dominick McKinley was the number 1 defensive lineman in the country. My goodness, Brian Kelly told a story earlier this week about Dominick McKinley trying to back squat, got up to 650 pounds. They ran out of weights. Now, I think what he meant was they couldn't fit any more plates on the bar because they didn't have 100-pound plates. But the point being, Dominick McKinley was a 5-star and the number 1 defensive tackle in the country. No, Darryus McKinley is not Dom, but that doesn't mean he can't play. And you can look at the 3-star rating and being number 477 nationally, and that's all fine and good, but there's 2 things I would like to point out. One is something I'm very consistent on that we talk about here anytime we talk about a prospect. And if you're an everydayer, you've heard me say it, you could probably say it out loud before I even do. I'm not so much considered with or concerned with the star rating of the ranking. I am more concerned with your offer list. If all your offers are from a bunch of G5 schools, I'm a little concerned. Well, Darryus McKinley, he don't have a ton of offers, but his offers are all really impressive. 7 of them are SEC schools: LSU, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Auburn, Missouri. We mentioned Florida as well. He's also got offers from Miami, Baylor, Syracuse, and Louisville. So the point being, I don't really give a rip that he doesn't have 50 offers or that he's not a 5-star. Look at the schools that were recruiting him with legitimate committable offers. It's a long, impressive list, and we're expecting Darryus McKinley is going to pick LSU. Again, the recruiting prediction machine from Rivals has LSU with a 99.1% chance of landing Darryus McKinley. So that would be a really significant get because, again, you'd be talking about another significant in-state prospect from Louisiana, of course, for the class of 2026 that LSU is targeting. They've already had tremendous success outside of Blaine Bradford with prospects in the state. You've got Lamar Brown committed, the number 1 prospect in Louisiana. Blaine Bradford, the number 2 prospects committed to Ohio State. But then Richard Anderson, Jabari Mack, Bryson Martinez, Aiden Hall, Kenny Darby, all committed to LSU. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 7 prospects in the state are committed to LSU. And you've still got Des Ellis committed as well out of Franklin Parish. So the point being, Darryus McKinley, for what it's worth, is the 16th best player in Louisiana. And you've also got Isaiah Washington out of Haynesville committed, who's the 15th best player in Louisiana. Point being, LSU has seen something in McKinley that they really like. And while they were recruiting him with Bo Davis as the defensive line coach, I would also point out that Darryus McKinley at 6'3", 270, certainly with the body and the frame to put on more weight, but at 6'3", 270, that looks a lot more like a Kyle Williams defensive lineman than some of the guys that Bo Davis recruited. Now, Bo Davis, one of the guys that were 6'5", 360, the big space eaters that were going to eat up blocks and free up defensive tackles to make plays. Kyle Williams wants smaller, powerful, explosive interior players that are going to go get upfield and make plays and dominate. And Darryus McKinley more fits that bill. So Darryus McKinley set to make his announcement on Friday, and we are expecting that it'll be LSU. Then a day later, on Saturday, it will be Duce Gerald making his announcement. And Shea Dixon from On 3, the Bengal Tiger, stopped by with us earlier this week to give us the latest on Duce Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, in the Duce Gerald, he's a top 10 D lineman in this class, and coming out of Georgia, but he's going to leave the state of Georgia. And what makes this intriguing for LSU is that he's got family in the area because his dad went to Scotlandville, and his dad signed with Ole Miss when Frank Wilson and Coach O, all those guys were up in Oxford. So time flies. Matt, we've done this with Chad Jones and Jai Jean, everybody else. It's all, we're all getting very old when we followed their recruitment and now their kids' recruitments. But Duce Gerald's dad, I guess the connection, Ole Miss is a finalist because he's an alum there, but Frank Wilson being now at LSU and being the guy who recruited him up there and has kept up with him over the years, kind of his road put LSU into the mix. And then Oregon is obviously one of the better recruiting teams in the country, like LSU. They've been a favorite of his for a while as well. So I think if you're handicapping it, maybe you say Oregon's the leader, but I do think LSU outpaces Ole Miss at this point, even being the alma mater of his father.
So, looks like Duce Gerald's very likely, according to Shea, picks the Oregon Ducks and goes from Georgia all the way out to Eugene, Oregon, which would be a huge win for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Of course, Dan Lanning was on staff at the University of Georgia, is now the head coach at the University of Oregon. Very good defensive-minded coach. And, of course, they got Nike money, so they can sling it around when they need to. No judgment here. I think it's a great thing, and I'd be envious if of that. I wish my school had Nike money, but I will wait and see what happens on Saturday with Duce Gerald set to announce. And again, Gerald is one of those elite top prospects in the country. He is a consensus 4-star, the number 93 overall player in the country, the 8th best defensive lineman. ESPN actually rates him as the 2nd best defensive lineman and the number 40 overall player in the country. So a very highly thought of prospect. The other thing that's interesting about Duce Gerald's 6'1", 268. What do we keep saying over and over and over again about Kyle Williams and the style of defensive lineman he's recruiting? He doesn't want the gigantic space eaters. He wants the smaller, athletic, fast, physical, explosive defensive linemen that aren't going to be space eaters, the ones that are going to be the playmakers up the middle. You saw it with bringing in Bernard Gooden via the transfer portal, and you're seeing it with kind of how they're addressing this class for 2026. Now, for whatever it is worth, when you look at LSU for the class of 2026 already, on the defensive line, they've got Richard Anderson committed, who's the number one defensive tackle in America, which is incredible to have him already on board. After that, though, you have no other. I'm making sure I got this correct. I don't believe there's another defensive tackle committed. No other interior defensive tackles other than Richard Anderson committed right now. And while it could be concerning a little bit, and while we think they'll get Darryus McKinley and maybe not on Duce Gerald, remember, you're going to lose Jacoby and Guillory and you're going to lose Bernard Gooden. But Dom McKinley will be back for a junior season. Ahmad Bro will be back for a junior season. Shone Washington could come back for his redshirt senior season. Sadir Mitchell could certainly return as well. And then LSU just went so ham on this recruiting class at defensive tackle, signing 5 interior defensive linemen in this most recent class, that the numbers at defensive tackle are still going to be very good for LSU, regardless of what happens in the high school signing class for this coming cycle in 2026. Again, you've got Richard Anderson, the number one defensive tackle in the country, committed, and it looks like they'll add Darryus McKinley as well. Wait and see on Duce Gerald and if they add anybody else. But the numbers are going to be really good either way. Buddy Mathis, Brandon Brown, Zion Williams, all true freshmen as parts of this class. Sadir Mitchell would certainly be back. Ahmad Bro, Dom McKinley. So you're good on numbers. But see what happens over the weekend for the Tigers. Looks like they're in good shape right now with Darryus McKinley. Maybe not so much for Duce Gerald, but we'll all wait and see how it plays out with these announcements coming up on Friday and on Saturday. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where DripDrop comes in. Whether you're on top of your hydration, you notice everything works better. Your energy, your mood, your focus, even your skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why you will love DripDrop. DripDrop is a doctor-developed, scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. So find your go-to flavor. If you've tried a lot of different electrolyte powders in the past, but nothing really tastes good or works fast or is effective, then you need to try DripDrop. Right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com, promo code LockedOnCollege. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LockedOnCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Sometimes you all provide the best questions and content for me to discuss here. And I had a listener who was watching the show send me a question after the first day of camp. And this is probably the right question that everyone should be asking. Well, if you're an everydayer and you heard our day one camp report shout out, if you didn't, maybe go back and listen or watch to the day one camp report. And I went through how much success the LSU offense had in day one in those team periods. The first period, we watched the first team offense go right down the field in 6 plays and score in a hurry up, no huddle. Beautiful touchdown pass from Garrett Nussmeier to Berrien Brown. When they went outside, running a little 7-on-7 drill, Nussmeier hit his first 7 passes. And it was shades of 2023 all over again. Elite quarterback, veteran, elite wide receiver talent, and a hapless secondary. That was the feeling a lot of people had. And as we're watching, we're going, are we watching a repeat of what we saw 2 years ago? But I think there's 2 things that are undeniable that lead me to believe it's going to be different. Now, to specifically answer the question, are LSU's receivers really that good? Are the cornerbacks struggling that much? The answer can be yes to both. And that was the truth in 2023. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas really were that good. I mean, Kyron Lacey was your number 3. Aaron Anderson was on that team. Like, your receivers really were that good. The flip side is we also learned that the secondary really was that bad. So when I look at this team right now, I do believe that the offensive skill talent really is that good. And some of it isn't even a guess. Like, Aaron Anderson led LSU in receiving a year ago. Nick Anderson averaged 21 yards of reception at Oklahoma 2 seasons ago. You just go on down the list. Xavier Thomas is a proven SEC wide receiver. You brought in Barry Brown, who was an All-American 2 years ago. Chris Hilton, we've seen what he could do. He scored touchdowns in each of his last 3 games a season ago when he finally got healthy. You've got talent. Like, that's undeniable. You've got amazing elite talent at receiver. What do you have at cornerback is a little more of a question. But I also think what is undeniable is that your cornerback talent is better in 2025 than it was in 2024. Remember, a year ago, your top 3 cornerbacks were Zy Alexander, who's a good player, but an FCS player coming off a torn ACL, who also went undrafted. And that was your best corner. That's a far cry from Patrick Peterson, Derek Stingley, Tre'Davious White, the first-round talents we'd seen at that position. I mean, again, let him marinate. Your best corner was an FCS transfer coming off a torn ACL who went undrafted. That was your best guy. No slight to Zy Alexander, but a dramatic difference from what we've become accustomed to for the last 15 years. Well, after that, it was sophomore Ashton Stamps and true freshman PJ Woodland. Like, those were your best cornerbacks a year ago. Sage Ryan started the first game at cornerback. It was atrocious because they were trying to go with a veteran. They've finally moved him back to safety. But those were your top 3 guys. FCS transfer coming off a torn ACL, true sophomore, and who's a good player, not a great player, and a freshman in PJ Woodland who was undersized. Those were your 3 best. Okay, fast forward to this year. Now, Ashton Stamps is a year older. Don't know if he's an elite guy, but he led your defense last year in pass breakups. You bring in Mansour Delane, who's a 2-year starter in the ACC at Virginia Tech. That is an upgrade over, like, Stamps is a 3rd-year player now, is an upgrade. Delane as a transfer coming in, 2-year starter at Virginia Tech, was tied for their team lead with 4 interceptions. And then you're talking about after that, Jakeem Jackson, who was a starter at Florida last year in the opener before he got injured, costing the rest of the season. He was a high 4-star recruited by Corey Raymond. And you've added DJ Pickett, the 5-star number 1 cornerback in America, who might very well resemble guys like Patrick Peterson, who started as a freshman and was awesome. Derek Stingley, who started as a freshman, was the best defensive back in America that year. Eli Ricks, who started as a freshman and was really good. Bad defense in 2020, but Eli Ricks wasn't lost. I mean, he was an elite level starter as a true freshman. Point being, DJ Pickett may end up being that for you. Maybe not, but may end up being that. And then you've got PJ Woodland a year older. So the point being, whereas you went through the 3 guys I just talked about from a season ago, just look at the talent upgrade you have right now. Now, they got to figure it out and how to play together within the confines of the secondary and all that sort of stuff. But the experience level, just the physical talent, the gifted ability of this cornerback room is a dramatic improvement over a year ago. I'm not telling you that this is Patrick Peterson and Morris Claiborne or Morris Claiborne and Thorold Simon. I'm not telling you this is Derek Stingley and Christian Fulton. But is it an awful lot better than Ashton Stamp, Zy Alexander, freshman PJ Woodland? Yeah. So the answer to the question is a little bit of both, but a big unknown. Yeah, the LSU offense and the skill guys are really good, and they're going to make a lot of good defenses look badly. And they're going to win their fair share of reps over really good players. And maybe part of this in the first couple of days was LSU's receivers winning reps over really good players early. The other component that is also undeniable, if you're watching or listening to this, you know the answer to this just by the nature of the fact that you're watching or listening. You know enough about football that you'll know this answer. If I said, aside from cornerback, what is the biggest way to affect the passer, to assist your defensive backs in your defensive passing game? What is it? Was a pass rush. If you can affect the quarterback, you're going to give assistance to your cornerbacks. So it's a pass rush. Well, you've added Jack Pyburn and Jamari Butler and Patrick Payton and Gabe Relaford's a year older and Harold Perkins is back. LSU is going to be better this year at rushing the passer, which is going to make it easier for the secondary to cover in theory. So a lot, just think about, we talked about the first day of LSU's fall camp, how when they went outside, did 11 on 11, the LSU defense had the upper hand. A big part of that was Bernard Gooden had 2 sacks from the interior. Jamari Butler had a pressure from the right edge, the right defensive edge, working against Carius Curran. You got pressure on Nussmeier, and he wasn't able to be as effective. So LSU's pass rush, I think, also assists the increase in talent level in that secondary, which is undeniably going to make LSU a better defense at every level. We're still talking about it. We're seeing some of it start to work through as the Tigers are into fall camp. But pretty soon they'll get a chance to prove it on August 30th against Clemson. A game that I want to talk about as we put a button on today's episode on Locked On LSU, your team every day. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. You ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? Well, the app shows you panoramic seat views so there are no surprises. And the Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. There's been so much talk about LSU and Clemson and so much focus on that game from the LSU side of things. Something that Sam Acho on ESPN's College Game Day Live said might be a little bit of a concern.
It costs you your confidence. It's a 12, 13, maybe even more game season. If you put so much focus on game one and you lose game one, all of a sudden you focus on the big picture rather than the little things. It was the defense that cost LSU many games last season. Little things. They didn't do a great job of adjusting when it came to motions against the run game. And so if you focus on, we got to do everything we can to win this game, then you lose against a really talented Clemson offense. All of a sudden the morale and the confidence of the team can go down and you'll miss the little things, which is playing better defense led by Blake Baker.
But what if you win? If you win, it can catapult your season forward like 2011 LSU against Oregon in that top 5 win. What if LSU goes on the road and beats Clemson? Dramatically different conversation. Now, if you lose that game, which is certainly possible, as we've talked about here, LSU is a 3.5-point underdog in that game. If you lose that game, your season isn't lost. You come home a week later, you play Louisiana Tech, and then you get an opportunity to play the University of Florida. I would submit that is where Brian Kelly will earn his paycheck, is how LSU responds after the Clemson game, regardless of what happens on the scoreboard. Because even if LSU loses, I'll remind you what happened the very first year of the college football playoff, back in 2014. Ohio State played a home game at the Horseshoe against Virginia Tech and lost. That Virginia Tech team ended up going 6-6. That was not a good Virginia Tech team, and Ohio State lost on their home field to them, a team that would go 6-6. Well, we know what happened. Ohio State ran the table, ended up winning the Big Ten championship game, blowing out Wisconsin 59-0, getting into the college football playoff, and with a backup quarterback in Cardale Jones, went on and won the national championship. Again, a team that lost their season opener at home to a Virginia Tech team that finished 500, ended up winning the national championship. Even Ohio State a year ago lost 2 games and still won the national championship. But if you go back to 2014, the difference was Urban Meyer, a Hall of Fame caliber coach who knew how to manage his team's emotions after dropping that season opener to Virginia Tech, getting them on track and leading them all the way to the national championship with a third-string quarterback in Cardale Jones. I'm not submitting here that LSU is going to win a national championship with Colin Hurley. What I'm saying is it is possible to lose that opener against Clemson and still rebound and have a fantastic, even a championship caliber season. We've seen it done. That's why I think Brian Kelly will prove his worth as a coach, not based on what happens against Clemson, but what happens after that Clemson game, regardless of the outcome. And you'll be talking about it plenty here on Locked On LSU. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes of the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.